Most bankers aren't ready to help you until after their third cup of coffee. But with Central National Bank's after-hours service, you don't have to wait for the bank lobby to open to get help. You can contact us from 6 to 8:30 in the morning or from 5 to 10 in the evening, and we'll connect you to a real, live, local person who can answer questions and fix problems 7 days a week. Bank different. Bank Central. Central National Bank. Member FDIC.
With threats to our nation waiting around every corner, adaptability is more important than ever. When conditions change without notice, quick strategic thinking is crucial. And with obstacles consistently impending, determination is essential in overcoming them. It's this willingness, decisiveness, and resilience that sets Marines apart. With our fighting spirit, we don't just fight battles, we win them. Marines are the constant our nation counts on to fight the unknown. And through adaptable problem solving, we do just that. Learn more at Marines.com.
Hello, Portland Trailblazer fans, and welcome to this edition of the Blazers Edge podcast. I'm Dave Deckard, managing editor of BlazersEdge.com. We are glad to be with you thick in the middle of the playoffs. Well, the beginning middle. Well, it could be the middle, depending on how the Blazers do. As we stand, they are 0-1 after a hard-fought but ultimately unsuccessful Game 1 versus the Golden State Warriors. The outcome, not a surprise, maybe a little more of a surprise that they played as well as they did, or at least stayed as close as they did for 3 quarters. And we're going to bring in co-host Dan Morang. And Dan, what were your general impressions? Give us an impression or two from Game 1. What stood out for you?
The fact that I got sucked into the game. That part of it alone was enough for me to cry. But general impressions overall, it was fun. There were some interesting developments, particularly CJ McCollum's defense. Like, where has that been for 2 years? The fact that those two played that great and didn't get the support. The lineup structure and how that kind of all played out. There was a couple things going on that in that game that I didn't expect, but overall, I mean, I don't think the outcome was any different than anybody expected.
Well, let's start at shooting guard then. Let's start with McCollum. Obviously, 16 for 28 was the standout line. By the way, Damian Lillard shot 26. So between them, they were 54 shots of the 93 the Blazers took. Came from Lillard and McCollum, but 16 for 28, 4 for 6 from three-point land, 41 points, 8 rebounds for CJ. Were you expecting anything like that?
Going into this, I said if Portland was going to have any chance in any particular game, these two needed to average, Dame and CJ needed to average at least 65 points. You basically have to add, 15 to 18% to their regular season total because of the output that the Warriors bring. And 41 was an incredible outburst, especially with the efficiency that he put in. But I was expecting more, 31 to 33 from both of them. That was kind of the range. I figured more shots would come their way, but for both of them to shoot, 54 shots and combined to shoot over 50%, that's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, wow. It was one of the all-time great playoff performances, I think, in Blazers history.
Oh, no doubt.
And made even more incredible by the fact that Golden State was guarding him. It's not like they concentrated on Lillard and let McCollum go. They were challenging his shots, and he still made over 50%. I mean, it was just amazing to watch. And as you pointed out, the defense. Talk about CJ's defense a little bit and what you saw.
Yeah, that was, and I said this on Twitter, and it apparently garnered a lot of eyes because everybody kind of nodded in agreement in that was CJ's best game-long effort defensively I've ever seen. And it wasn't like, oh, hey, he did something decent for a little while, or hey, he was engaged. He wore Klay Thompson like a sweater. We'll talk about Steph, we'll talk about Draymond, and we'll talk about Durant and the impact those guys had. The guy we won't talk about at all is Klay Thompson. He was irrelevant in this game.
Yeah, and all year, kind of. Klay has been struggling against the Blazers since he exploded on them last spring in their second-round series. He has been abysmal versus Portland. And McCollum, maybe that has something to do with it. Maybe the Blazers are in his head a little bit. Maybe it's like, okay, well, Durant's slid into the number 2 position here, or number 1A, and now what do I do? But yeah, Klay did not look anything like the Klay Thompson we're used to seeing on either end of the court.
No, the way CJ was tracking him during the regular season, both Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum get lost on when they have to go through multiple actions. So if they have to run through multiple baseline screens, down screen, back screen, try to fight through traffic. I mean, that's the Warriors' MO. They're going to screen you to death, and they're going to run you ragged all game long. CJ was in his hip pocket all game long. I mean, he came off the one curl at the top of the free throw line, and he's within a foot of him, and he trails him, gets in front of him, jumps up and blocks a shot. This is Klay Thompson, who's 6'7", 6'8". CJ ain't that big. So that's to let you know how tight he's playing him.
Yeah, he knew where he was going to be. Mm-hmm. Although I must say, and I don't know, maybe you'll correct me here, I'm not sure, but as I was watching the Warriors with Durant, they are running a few less of those ultra motion plays where, at least in my eyes, like multiple screens where they have like 4 or 5 different options or different movements in a given set. Seems like it's a little more traditional. There's 1 or 2 screens, especially a high screen. And then, whoever's open, and often it's Durant because he's big and he's got a mismatch. So they'll run a screen or 2 and then go with the mismatch basketball. Did you see that as well?
Yeah, Klay's sets are still like that because he can't create off the bounce. But what you have is you've got 3 other guys on the floor in Draymond, Durant, and Steph who can all create off the bounce and are phenomenal passers. But Klay still needs to work to get his shot. And they'll run those sets with Klay as the primary beneficiary, but they have the luxury of having KD on the short corner and Steph on the weak side. So the spacing is usually pretty spectacular. So it plays more in CJ's favor, I think, as far as when you look at what he did defensively, that he was able to stay that tight to him, knowing how much floor space that Klay gets with those guys on the floor.
Yeah, in a sense, I think in a sense the distraction makes it a little easier because now CJ's like, okay, you have one job. Now, there's a lot to that job. It's intricate, but it's not quite the same where your guy's going to be one of the primary horses that gets ridden no matter what, and now you have to be on constantly. It felt like CJ had the plays tracked. CJ knew when the ball was going to come to Klay, and he knew when Klay caught it pretty much what was going to happen, and that predictability really helped him zero in. That does not diminish the fact at all that he did it. I mean, often the Blazer guards, as you say, have had one job all season long, and they didn't do it. And this time they did, and it was really pretty darn powerful.
Yeah, no, when you expect a guy, or when you see a guy like Damian Lillard or CJ McCollum trying to fight through screens, you're normally sitting there shaking your head wondering, oh, God, how's this play going to end? There were scant few times where one of the Warriors came off on a catch just dead clean. I mean, really, the only times that I saw guys come that clean were when neither one of those guys were involved in the play, and that's a big-time turn of events from 82 previous games.
Yeah, although I think Curry got free every now and again, which you'd expect. But let's talk about Damian Lillard versus Steph Curry because, look, before the game, before the series, there would be no doubt which one of those two was superior. As much as we like Damian Lillard, as much as Trailblazers fans hold him in awe, and for good reason. I mean, Curry MVP. Curry's teams go to the finals. On Sunday, Damian Lillard's stat line: 12 for 26. There were 5 rebounds and only 3 assists, but a lot of his teammates were missing shots. And 34 points. Steph Curry, 9 for 19, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, 29 points. Dame goes 3 for 9 from three-point land. Steph goes 3 for 8. They're virtually identical in free throws. I mean, you statistically, other than Damian taking more shots, you couldn't tell the difference between them. That in itself, I mean, is pretty remarkable. Obviously, it's just one game, but if the Blazers can counter Steph Curry with their own Steph Curry, that's pretty incredible.
Yeah, that only leaves them a Durant short, right? I mean, CJ outplays Clay, Dame outplays or matches Steph. I mean, that's you get that kind of performance from both those. 75 points. That's nuts from those two. So, I mean, Lillard himself just, it's crazy that we're sitting here talking so much about CJ because it outshines the performance that Damian had. Because, I mean, any other game, right? We're sitting here talking about, man, what a game from Damian.
Right. I mean, literally, you don't do that. You don't Steph Curry, especially in the playoffs. Remember what Curry did to them last year? It's like, oh, he's back. He's been injured. He's going to work his way into it. And he scores like 45 or some ungodly amount of
17 points in an overtime by himself.
Yeah, I mean, it was wrong. It was just wrong. It was like they were holding back and pulled an ace out of their sleeve. And this year, I mean, in this game at least, Lillard was the ace in the hole. I mean, obviously McCollum, but McCollum was the main guy. And all of a sudden, here comes Lillard with a follow-up cross. And wow, it's pretty incredible. So, look, those two guards not only did what they said they were going to do, they did more than they said they were going to do. The sticking point, of course, comes the entire rest of the team combined shot 12 for 39. And unlike McCollum and Lillard, at least some of those shots were pretty wide open.
Yeah, I mean, the Warriors' entire defensive strategy changed gears in the second half because while Portland is primarily a pick and roll team, Dame and CJ weren't really picking and rolling as often as frequently as they normally do. They were just taking guys off the bounce. And I mean, in the pantheon of NBA players who can create off the bounce, you're looking at two of probably the top 5 in the league. So letting them do that, probably not in your best interest. So the Warriors shift gears, and they're like, okay, no, that's cool. We'll go ahead and trap every single time you bring any other body up there, and we're taking the ball out of your hands. Well, the problem is that those other hands that it's ending up in aren't, I mean, this is an all-state. You're not in good hands.
Yeah, well, and part of that, frankly, was a domino effect. Because in the first half, the supporting cast was not hitting any of their shots, but especially not their outside shots. I mean, Mo Harkless went 1 for 6 from three-point land in the game overall. Evan Turner hit a couple in the second half, but he was so wide open, he might as well. He could have.
You had to take those.
Yeah, he could have eaten at a buffet and then had a massage mani pedicure and then taken the shot. Alan Crabb was 1 for 3. Connaughton was 0 for 2 for what it's worth, but that's not much. But in any case, they weren't hitting their shots. So what was the penalty for Golden State packing the lane? What was their reason not to? They figured, A, these guys aren't hitting the outside shots. B, they're going to try to get the supporting cast going by taking them inside. And C, Damian and CJ are scoring off of drives anyway, so why would we not pack everybody in the lane? And that's exactly what they did. And notice in the second half, all of a sudden you get Vonleh catching deep or driving in, and then there's Draymond Green blocking him, 3 players surrounding him. Al-Farouq Aminu, it was painful to watch. He would get in the lane, there would be a guy or two on him. He would try like 7 moves in there, like spin, hesitate, stutter, spin. He was open for a brief second, but couldn't get the shot off. And all of a sudden, on his 7th move, he loops something with his left hand practically over his head. I mean, it's just horrible to watch. But that's because Golden State was free to do that because nobody else was hitting.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to call back to last year in the playoffs, remember the narrative heading into the Clippers series? Man, Mason Plumlee is a key to unlocking the Blazers' offense. No, he wasn't. They went into the second round, and the Warriors did exactly what they did last night, except they just flipped the script in the second half. And in Mason Plumlee's place was Noah Vonleh. Noah Vonleh caught the ball in the exact same places that Mason Plumlee did. You know what the Warriors did? Didn't care. Go ahead, Noah Vonleh. Yep. You haven't done anything here, so yeah, no, you go ahead and catch the ball 8 feet from the rim. We don't trust you to hit anything other than a dunk. Alan Crabb spent 20 minutes on the floor, so you're arguably your best pure shooter outside of McCollum isn't even on the floor. Harkless, he's free of his incentive-based contract, so he's letting it fly. It's just not falling. And Aminu, well, it's Aminu.
Yeah, I mean, painful is the only word I can describe. It's like
especially after the three quarters of awesome.
Yeah, had the Blazers been able to score, even during the three quarters of awesome, though, this was ongoing. Had they gotten reasonable production from the other players, this could have been a different game. But it was almost impotent is the word that comes to mind. And, in a way, it makes the guards stand out more because under that pressure, they flourish.
Yeah.
But everybody else just wilted. I mean, you can't. 1 for 5 from Alan Crabb, 1 for 5 from Noah Vonleh. You just can't have that. The one guy that I thought acquitted himself really quite well was Evan Turner. I mean, he not only did he shoot 3 for 7, and he hit a couple of his threes, as we said, he'd better be able to hit those. He was so wide open. But he had 10 rebounds, 4 assists. But he also, I thought, was clearly maybe the best defensive player out there on Portland's side, excepting maybe McCollum.
Yeah, I'd give it to CJ. Turner had
a tougher job.
Yeah, though. He had the unenviable task of guarding the Durantula, and he did pretty well considering. He actually bothered Durant a few times. He flashed out, cut off a couple, and he also made some just ridiculously terrible mistakes, though. Shading down to help on Draymond Green and leaving Durant at the three-point line. Not very high up on my list of things that I ever want to do on a basketball court.
Sure, but I mean, at some point, the more you make Durant a three-point shooter, the better off you are. He was killing them inside. I mean, and this is probably the story of the game. Everything else was equal, but when Portland's scoring guards had to pass, they were passing to Vonleh's, and they were passing to Aminu's, and they were passing to Harkless's. Now, granted, Mo hit 5 of 13, but still, the Warriors were passing to Kevin Durant. And yeah. Kevin Durant, there was nobody on Portland's side who was within 4 inches of his reach, and there was nobody who could body him up. There's nobody who could do anything except maybe try to cut off his dribble a little bit, but he just turned his back to all those shorter defenders and either backed them in or just shot over them.
Yeah, the crazy thing is we'll sit here and talk about how incredible a performance Draymond had in the second half defensively, and Steph in the first half really catching fire. But sprinkled in there were these bursts from Durant. It's not like Durant was jacking shots. I think he ended up like 10 of 19. I mean, he was just stupid efficient, and he just torched. I mean, when that's your
you were close. Yeah, actually, he was 12 of 20.
I'm sorry, he was even better.
That's even more. He hit 3 more shots than you thought on just 1 more attempt. So yeah, it was pretty disgusting.
I mean, when you have a guy that's just absolutely lighting you up, and when they do it that efficiently, you just look up at the box score and you're like, how the hell does he have 30 points? Because it doesn't feel like it, because it's only taken 20 shots, and to say only 20 when you're playing at a pace of a game where you're gonna see on average probably 120 points, that's really not that many shots because there's about 110 to 115 possessions. So when a guy just absolutely cans like that for a team that's already stupid good, there's just not a lot you can do.
Yeah, it ended up being the backbreaker because the Blazers were defending pretty well, and they were running with the Warriors. They were doing everything they needed to, but whenever the Warriors needed something, they just rang Durant's doorbell and basically came out.
That's what they brought him in for.
There you go.
I mean, everyone wants to talk about how the Warriors run this new brand of basketball, this new breed, this new style, sharing the ball, all this movement. You know what you do when you need a bucket in the playoffs? You give it to your best player and you say, go get me a bucket. When you can turn to Kevin Durant, who's arguably the most diverse offensive weapon in the league, you can talk about Westbrook, you can talk about Harden. Neither one of those guys are 7 foot tall, able to shoot over anybody, create out the bounce, go right, go left, pull up, have the ability to finish in the lane, off either foot with either hand, or go down in the post. I mean, the guy literally has it all. And it's not like you're talking like LeBron James where he's more dominant in the post but can't shoot out of three. Durant's dominant wherever he has the ball. There's two people in the league, maybe three, who offer any kind of real resistance to Kevin Durant. LeBron James, Kawhi Leonard, and Giannis. If you don't have one of those three guys, you're not going to be able to stop him effectively. So you just hope to God he has one of those bad playoff Kevin Durant nights.
Yeah, I think if you're Portland, you push him out to the perimeter as much as possible. You try to get him overconfident. The Oklahoma City cruising Kevin Durant, who would just drift out deep and shoot face-up jumpers because he could. But the problem is, A, he'd be embarrassed to do that in Golden State because you got a couple of guys who can really do that. And B, they're already out there, so he's on the inside. And C, the Blazers aren't throwing anyone above 6'8" at him. So, I mean, what incentive does he have to back out? He can just back down. Let's take a look at Draymond Green for a second, and then we'll get to the piece de resistance. But, okay, Green, manageable in the first half. He played really well. He just took over the defense in that second half. It's like when you said, okay, we're going inside, it was just basically like winding him up and turbo power, press the button. Okay, you're going to see a KO here.
Yeah, I mean, it was brutal. I haven't seen somebody flip a switch like that. It was Ben Wallacey, where in those Pistons years where the paint was his. It did not matter. I tell you what, right now, and I said this the other night, Durant owes Draymond Green a really nice dinner. And it's not just because of the singular defensive performance he put on. Dame drove to the rack and was going to absolutely bang on Durant's head. I mean, he was going to dunk all over him. All of 6'1" Damian Lillard was going to dunk all over 7+ Kevin Durant, and there was not a damn thing he could do about it. All of a sudden, out of left field, it's like, oh my God. I mean, it was like the heel making the entrance in wrestling, man. It's like, oh my God, that's Draymond's music. And then boom, just absolutely swats Damian. And that was the play that just ignited them.
Yeah. And again, in some ways, completely Portland's fault because you left him just one area to guard. I mean, you basically shined a spotlight. It's like prison guards out there, and then you put neon tape out there of your escape route, left a sign saying, at 2 a.m., we're going to cut this fence right here. Yeah. And it's like, oh, man, he was a Doberman. He was just chewing their rear ends all through that second half, and there was just nothing they could do. And at that point, the scary thing was, at that point, it just didn't matter how many threes Lillard and McCollum hit or how many contested jumpers or whatever, because you knew then that there was going to be no balance. You knew that it was just that might as well have been the clock ticking on the Warriors' victory, every jumper that they took, because there was nothing else to back them off.
Yeah, I mean, the stat line Draymond put up, he almost screwed around and had a triple-double and a 5x5. I mean, you want to talk about the impact of a singular player? I mean, there's very, very few guys in NBA history who can have that kind of an impact on one side of the floor. And I venture a guess he's the shortest among all of them. And yet, I mean, there he is. Vonleh tried to challenge him, and Vonleh's a physical specimen. And he had no chance. That's a hell of a testimony to what he can do.
No, I mean, Vonleh came in there, and Vonleh has the physical tools, but there was bass in Draymond Green's voice, and Vonleh's going to the lane like, I think I'm going to make a shot of, excuse me, if you just move aside. No, says Draymond Green, out of here. This is my yard. Go away. Let's talk about the salt in the wound here. We talk about Portland's supporting cast. Let's exclude the 4 Warriors that we have talked about. They're clear stars. The rest of the Warriors lineup.
You can stop at one name, Ian Clark.
I know. Let's give the overall. Remember, Portland's lineup went 12 for 39. Golden State's other guys below their top 4 went 10 for 16. As you say, Ian Clark, 4 for 5, hit both of his 3-pointers, scored 12 points, The entirety of Portland's bench scored 9. Portland's bench plus Noah Vonleh scored 11. So Ian Clark in 12 minutes outscored 4 Portland players who played a combined 23, 33, 55, 59 minutes. 59 minutes to score 11 points for 4 Blazers, 12 points in 12 minutes for Ian Clark.
Yeah, that's like that, the dodgeball moment where you're like, all right, let's see how it works out for him, Cotton. It's just not getting it done. I mean, Ian Clark, I think Jason Quick posted it. It was one of the CSN guys. He's like 24 of 30 against Portland this season. I mean, that dude is the owner, co-owner, client, and everything about the Blazer Killer Club. He is just on an absolute tear against Portland, and I don't really understand why. He's not lightning quick. He's a good shooter, but he's not one of those guys that comes off the bench. He's not Lou Williams. He's not going to come out and just torch you. But if you're Portland, he is, and I can't get my head around that. And for Portland, that's a big problem. I mean, you'd expect a guy like Alan Crabb to step in, right? But nope. Ian Clark is going to single-handedly outscore everyone basically not named Damon CJ. That's nuts.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you want to talk wrestling terms. It's like you're in the Royal Rumble. You had your eye on Andre the Giant and John Cena, and you just got put over the ropes by the Repo Man. I mean, it's not. It's
the Blazers bench. They were the very first guys out for the Royal Rumble. They were the first ones in the ring. That's what they were.
Like Santino Marella or something like that.
Yeah.
So
Kevin Durant was number 31. He was the second to last one to come out.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, it's like, okay, there's an analogy there. Sorry about the WWE stuff, folks, but it's like, okay, Lillard and McCollum were like, I don't know, the Hardy Boys or a great tag team or something like that, but Golden State trotted out The Rock, they trotted out Stone Cold Steve Austin, they came with The Undertaker. You just weren't, it wasn't going to happen. So, okay. Big picture, glass half empty, glass half full. Obviously, the score was tied at 88 after 3 quarters. Golden State still won 121 to 109 or whatever it was. So, look, do you think that this was a positive? Do you think that this was predictable, that this was the way it's always going to go? What's the big picture take from Game 1?
Yes. I mean, it was just... This was, a boxing, if we're going to go boxing terms, this was Ivan Drago and everything that is evil and bad in the Warriors. But except for, Rocky coming out with the montage, we're talking about Sly Stallone, like today, like 78-year-old Sly Stallone. He came out and hit him with his best punch, and sure, it was damn good for a senior citizen. And 75 points between those two guys? You would expect that's enough, but it wasn't even close. Everybody will talk about 3 quarters, just that 1 quarter. That was the entire series last year. You played with them for 75%, and there was 1 quarter where you got blown up.
Yeah, and I'll go older with the analogy. This is like John Wayne in a movie with a young kid who shoots pretty good with that revolver, but he's like, sorry, kid, you ain't got nothing. I can't do a very good John Wayne on the spur of the moment. But, it's like, if you hit me, you better make sure I stay down. In any case, we can also put some historical perspective on this. Look, if you watch the Clyde Drexler teams when the Blazers were really, really, really good, like the best,
finals good,
among the best 2 or 3 teams in the league, right? This is exactly what the early rounds of the playoffs were like. I mean, people forget Phoenix was pretty scary back then. In fact, they would rise to prominence after Portland faded. Utah was scary. This was Malone Stockton. San Antonio was really scary. But this would pretty much happen to whomever the Blazers faced in round 1, off in round 2. They'd look good for a little while, but then Portland would put the throttle on, 1 quarter, maybe quarter and a half, and it would end up a double-digit win. And the other teams would go, if only this, if only the refs, if only a couple more shots, if only who knows. And that's exactly what losing to a great team looks like. You sit there with your if-onlys, and it was close, and they go, yep, I hear this about 20 times a year in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, they're in a position where they don't have to. They have 2 MVPs. They have the defensive player of the year. I mean, we're talking about in Portland, do they have a third star? And they're trying to figure out, who their 8th or 9th guy is that's going to give them 10 plus points a game. I mean, you want to talk about first world problems? The Warriors have them. The Blazers are dealing with issues a little lower rung on the ladder. And, I mean...
you grabbed their heel. Yeah, you did. You did. I mean, they're up above you. Grabbed their heel. You held them down for 3 quarters, stopped them from climbing farther, but then they just kicked you in the face and started climbing anyway, like they always knew they were going to. Yeah. But, it's basically, this is not that different than one would have expected in the final outcome. It's just the journey looked different, but the journey's only, in the playoffs, look, the journey doesn't matter. I mean, it's not the regular season. You basically either win or you don't, and that's all there is when it comes to the postseason.
Every game is different. Every game has its own feeling, its own tenor, and their own ins and outs of it. I mean, there could be a game in this series where neither team is just hitting a dang thing, and it's a dogfight, and you wouldn't expect that. But the game's plan changes. The way teams execute and what they're looking to execute changes. So every game is so vastly different. Well, the outcome probably won't be. And I know some people will probably go, "Well, why are you so down? Why are you so?" Listen, if you follow me on Twitter, you know that I was genuinely excited and even gave into the belief that maybe Portland could steal one in Oakland in game 1. And then that third quarter started, and I went, nope, there is not a chance. They cannot get it done when that team is in. That's not to say that Portland's in a bad place. That team is just that good.
I will say this, though. Golden State was celebrating plays an awful lot, and I get Draymond Green's dunk was spectacular and stuff like that, but there were moments when you looked at the Warriors and you're going like,
"Oh yeah,
you're a little too excited. You're a little too excited about this little micro moment, and you're not that far ahead." It felt like if there was a game that could be taken, this one was winnable for the Blazers in the emotional sense, in the momentum sense. It was there. The problem is that they didn't end up doing it, and as you said, it was kind of almost like their best shot, and the Warriors were vulnerable. It didn't happen. It leaves me in a little bit of doubt as to what the rest of this series is going to look like. It would not surprise me to see the Blazers take a step backwards or downwards from here in game 2.
I mean, Dame and CJ, are we going to expect them to get 75 plus a night? I mean,
contested.
That's a heck of a burden to carry. And while I expect them to continue performing well, I don't. When Golden State lost a lot of their depth bringing in Kevin Durant, and Durant is a phenomenal defender, but you can't just run bodies at Dame and CJ for 48 minutes anymore. You don't have the same level in your bench that can sit there and just give those two guys hell all game long. So I think that's part of the trade-off when you bring in Durant. But at the same token, you're getting 30 easy points. So to expect Dame and CJ, like I said, to get 65 a night, I think is a very reasonable, as crazy as it sounds, expectation. Where things have just got to flip, the others. Turner had a nice night, but literally everybody else played below par.
Right. Well, and let's put this in perspective. I mean, CJ went crazy. Historical level Blazers crazy anyway. Durant with 32 and Curry with 29. On a reasonable night, that would be really, really good for Lillard and McCollum if they could match that. I have no doubt that Durant and Curry can do that again without thinking. I think it's pretty optimistic, or at least you'd say, yeah, that's a really, really good job if Dame and CJ can get 32 and 29. The problem is, you're still looking at the whole rest of the roster. I mean, that basically they can neutralize your two without thinking. When you neutralize their big two, it's a big party for you. When Golden State neutralizes Portland's big two, basically the Blazers are done.
Yeah, I mean, you're dead on the water at that point. You're just waiting for the bird dog to drag you to shore.
Right. So that means that CJ has to get 41 and Dame has to get 34. Then when the rest of the bench or rest of the supporting cast anyway shoots better, then you've got a chance. But, oh, by the way, you still ended up 12 points behind. So you got to get 12 more points out of that supporting cast. Then you're even with the Warriors. That's tough.
I mean, I don't know if there's a tool or remedy big enough and long enough to get you out of that hole.
Well, there might be one, though. Let's close this way. Yeah, every Blazer fan is hoping and looking. And look, Nurkic, rebounding was a quiet key to that second half. Mm-hmm. The Blazers, bless their hearts, they went hard at those boards, but they didn't really gain any advantage.
They were playing ridiculously small. There were long periods of time where Aminu was the biggest guy out there. And Aminu's a good rebounder. Evan Turner's decent for his size, but these aren't guys. Durant and Draymond will both gobble up boards. They're just too freaking long to keep off the boards. Right. They're just going to find their way to those guys.
Also, post play. Okay, Noah Vonleh's in there, and you know he's going to miss it. I mean, just to get it up over people, he has to arc it up in a parabola that's so high that it's coming down with, like, pigeon poop on it. And, you know, Aminu, that was a disaster in there. Nurkic would not be a disaster in the lane. Nurkic would be able to do some damage in there. Is it enough? I think, actually, Nurkic, you can make a reasonable claim that Nurkic would change the tenor of Portland's attack and would shore up that rebounding issue as long as he can stay out of foul trouble. That gives the Blazers a much better chance, at least, right? Yeah,
I mean, instead of punching with 18-ounce gloves on, you're bare-knuckle boxing then. You're fighting dirty with dirty. I will tell you this right now, and this has been echoed around by a lot of other folks in both Golden State and Portland media. Draymond's not going to get stupid out there and act a fool with a 7-foot, 300-pound monster just freight training him. I am more than okay with Nurkic picking up a foul or two if it means Draymond Green ends up on his backside. Because you have to. At this time of year, physical intimidation is a real thing. And in the playoffs, that's what Draymond did. He intimidated them out. I mean, not only were the results there, but after a few of those, you're just like, nah, I'm not about that life. Nurkic has had that effect in a couple games, and it's not just the block shots, but the key matchup between Denver and Portland, Nurkic's first 5 or 6 possessions were him rolling to the rim with a full head of steam, and nobody on that Nuggets team wanted any part of that. Draymond's big, he's long, he's strong. He's not Nurkic big, long, and strong. He will get absolutely trucked.
Yeah, and the Warriors don't have anybody out there except maybe JaVale McGee who could do anything except for bounce off of Nurkic. I mean, this big guy, Nurkic will laugh, and God forbid Green would try to kick him. I bet he'd burn a foul just landing flat on him.
Oh yeah, so, I mean, he falls like a big man too. Nurkic, everything about him, he's light on his feet and he dances around. But when he falls, it's kind of like the oh no. I mean, it's a big tree make big thud. I'd be around for that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to slight Zaza Pachulia either. He could probably put a body against Nurk, but yeah, I would be much more excited to see that. Obviously, I don't think that Nurk alone would be the savior. If nothing else, he might have the effect like we talked about in the regular season, where he puts guys one step lower in the rotation, which is one step closer to where they belong. But I think, look, long story short, and granted the series isn't over, but we talked about this before the game number 1. It was the critical one, and the opportunity was kind of there. The Blazers kind of didn't take it, didn't end up successful. The winner of game 1 wins an overwhelming amount of series.
It's what, like 85%?
Home team. Yeah, it's like 82 something.
Yeah, it's an absurd number.
And when it's 1-8, when it's the Warriors, I mean, look, this was your chance. Didn't happen. But look, I think that Nurk will make this a more exciting series. I think he'll make it a more competitive series. I just hope that he gets to play a little bit.
I mean, that's the big thing. And I know this sounds kind of defeatist, but I have no fake dreams about Portland pulling off some miraculous upset here. But the big ticket item for Portland making the playoffs was to get Nurkic playoff experience, right? I mean, what else is Portland really realistically going to gain? Dame's got it.
Distraction.
Dame's got it. CJ's got it. And yeah, you've got the narrative heading into next season. But otherwise, if you're talking about we're going to be in the playoffs and we're going to do something, doing something entails getting something from it. And the only one who's going to really stand to gain much from this is Nurkic to understand what a real playoff atmosphere is like.
Right. Although, granted, it would be his first experience. I think the first experience is always good, but at least after that, and in some ways before that, the playoff experience that counts is a playoff experience where you win.
Yeah.
You can lose later on, but you got to figure out what it takes to win a series. Granted, you can get some of that by being in proximity to the Warriors, but it's a tough thing, and I don't think I'm not expecting to get that much from this playoff series, but I would like it to be as entertaining as possible, which means Nurkic playing. But the long game isn't any better because of this playoff. The salary issues are still there. And I think one of the basic lessons that we're learning over again, as if we didn't know it already, is that I think you can win games with Noah Vonleh. You can win games with Mo Harkless. You can win games with Evan Turner and Myers Leonard and Al-Farouq Aminu. You just can't, and Alan Crabb. You just can't win games with all of them. That it's not going to work, that you've got 6 players there that are kind of indeterminate, that are playing semi-major roles. You need to get more quality in there. You need to get more definition in there. It just can't be continually spinning the Rubik's Cube and hoping you solve 3 sides. You've got to get that thing together in a coordinated manner with the players who fit and complement each other.
I mean, I like the way Stotts is more than willing to play, kind of go with that hot hand theory, but Alan Crabb, unless he's legitimately injured, can't play just 21 minutes. I understand the limitations of the matchups here, and you want CJ and Dame on the floor at all times, but you can't pay a guy $18 million to play 20 minutes. And then you got
long term.
Yeah, I mean that's just not going to work. Evan Turner playing, nearly 36 minutes. Who saw that coming in November?
If this keeps up, though, he's resurrected himself, in my opinion. I think he already has somewhat, but you could see why he was a serious possibility by the way he played in Game 1. I was terribly impressed. I thought this was probably his best game as a Trailblazer, and I liked it because he did it at the right time. And this is part of the benefit of having veterans who have been around, because they're not, first of all, he's not cursed with the Portland mindset. And second of all, which is we're happy to make the playoffs and, hey, this is pretty good. And, hey, we're not sure what's going to happen. He's like, no, I'm going to win. This is what you're supposed to do in this league. You play your hardest when it means the most. And second of all, the defense, I go back to that. I think, okay, I can see this. I can see a little bit what the vision was. Now, if you're going to keep Turner, though, I mean, I don't see Crabb being there for salary reasons and other reasons. And I think I don't see Turner and Aminu coexisting, or even Harkless. So no matter which one or two you land on, you're going to have some major shuffling for the rest of them. Otherwise, it's just not – even had they won this game, you weren't entirely sure they were going to win the series. It would have been a better start, obviously. But – they didn't win it, and they didn't really come close to winning it, and that's just a referendum on you're way far away still from where you need to be.
I mean, on entertainment value alone, Game 1 was incredible. The results in the second half, the fourth quarter, weren't great for Portland fans, but if you were looking for jaw-dropping plays and just engaging, entertaining basketball, it was there. I mean, Dame and CJ going absolutely ham. Durant silent 30, Klay Thompson being irrelevant. People were talking about that. And then the fourth quarter, I mean, I certainly didn't enjoy it, but you just kind of had to tip your cap to the performance that Draymond put together. So, I mean, as far as being captivating, yeah, the entertainment value is there, but watching Nurkic out there, being able to kick around and bang around and have some fun, because there's one thing that I can unequivocally say about Nurkic, in that I don't think there's a current Blazer right now that plays the game with more apparent joy. He wears his emotions on his sleeve, and to the extent that's what Draymond does. And I just something about that I love, and I think that brings another quality to the viewer.
That's a fair point. And speaking about emotion, though, as we close here, I have a question to ask you, because there was some hubbub a little bit before Game 1, on Twitter at least, because it was revealed, not a huge revelation, that the Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum were the highest scoring backcourt duo in the NBA, over Thompson and Curry. And there was a tweet or two that claimed that equated to them being the best backcourt duo in the NBA. Now, I know in a narrow sense that they outscored Thompson and Curry. However, I wanted to ask you, emotions aside, Blazer, whatever aside, do you think at this point, and you can use Game 1 as evidence, that Lillard and McCollum are a better backcourt duo than Golden State?
As far as what they mean to their team, Lillard and McCollum are the better duo. And I know how crazy that can sound, but if this version of Klay Thompson, the one that has to play not second fiddle, but third and sometimes fourth fiddle, he's just not that guy. And when you bump him down that rung, he's not nearly as effective. And clearly it's gotten into his head. I tell you what, the CJ McCollum, and it was probably one of the best performances of his career. But if he's dropping 30+ points a night or close to 30 points a night and playing that level of defense, that player is leaps and bounds better than Klay Thompson. And Steph's got the edge, but I mean, there are nights where it's gonna be push. So I mean, if we're looking at the evolution of CJ McCollum and becoming a legit two-way player, yeah. They could be the best duo, and that's crazy for me because I've never believed that these two could coexist together and the Blazers be that great.
Yeah, I'll still play the obvious devil's advocate. One would be Thompson and Curry still scored 47, almost 48 points combined.
Terrible,
I think Lillard and
terrible
McCollum
night.
were around 51. I'm talking about like averages over the season, though.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Lillard and McCollum still have 3 points on Thompson and Curry. At the same time, Thompson and Curry are playing in arguably, if not the best, one of the tippy-top defenses in the NBA, which is why Golden State is as good as they are. I need to see the Blazer defense be better with both of these guys on the court. I'm not saying they have to spearhead it. I don't care if the Blazers make up for it at all 3 other positions and these 2 guys just kind of prove they can hold the fort a little bit, enough for everybody else to shine defensively. I'm good with that. I'm not asking them to be defensive superstars, but I am asking to see some evidence that the defense is going to hold up with both of them on the court. Then I will say, well, the offensive edge and the ability of McCollum to handle the ball and to dribble where Klay Thompson cannot, that obviously makes Lillard and McCollum better, but I am just not there yet.
It's kind of strange that we can get to that point, right? Because, I mean, a year ago, even as much as we love these guys, it's laughable.
Yeah, people were making noise, but it was considered a little bit quackery, I suppose, out there. But, yeah, it's not – let's put it this way. Let's give them this credit. It's not as far out there anymore, and it's even less far out there after Game 1. I mean, there was impressive stuff going on. Now, we may be having a different discussion next week.
Yeah.
We will be 4 games in at that point. If it's a sweep, if those contested shots stop falling for McCollum and Lillard, which is a likely possibility, by the way. I mean, you just as well could have seen a 9 of 26 outing instead of 12 of 26, frankly. It would not have been surprising. But if that happens, probably we're revisiting this conversation. But right now, this is pretty much peak Lillard-McCollum time.
I mean, is that more of an indictment on Klay Thompson regressing, or is it more of a compliment to McCollum's growth?
both, and I'm good with both, frankly, because I think Golden State has had it a little too good.
They can deal with some aggression.
Really, yeah, I would be okay if Klay Thompson could not guard C.J. McCollum. I would be fine with that. I think he needs a weakness. I think he needs to come down a peg or two. And you know what? I think it's possible that Klay Thompson, now Golden State people are going to kill me. Understand how I mean this and how I don't. Matt Barnes, for instance, when he left the Warriors, not the same, right? Andrew Bogut, when he left the Warriors, not the same. Klay Thompson is way above their level. But I think Klay Thompson could be considered in some ways an ideal fit for the Warrior system. And you take him off and put him on another team, and he's just not quite going to be that Klay
Say what
Thompson.
you're really saying
good.
here, Dave. Say what you're really saying. He's a system player.
Well, I mean, he is kind of, but he's like the best. He's like the best of the best system players, and I think there are other systems he can fit in, right? I don't think he's totally Warriors dependent, but I think if you put C.J. McCollum on any other team, there's a high chance that he will still be C.J. McCollum.
He's still 25, 5, and 5.
I'm good with saying that. I think the gap between Lillard and Curry is still greater than it looks like on the surface, especially after Game 1. But still, I mean, again, full credit to Lillard and McCollum. They're good, and they were great in Game 1. I just don't think they're quite there yet. What do you guys think? We will leave you with that, podcast people. Come to Blazers Edge and comment. Do you think that the Blazers backcourt really is the best in the NBA at this point after what you saw in Game 1? Or is there more that you need to see? Leave us a comment, and we will see you next week where we will discuss, hopefully, an ongoing playoff series with the Golden State Warriors. Hopefully, Yusuf Nurkic playing his heart out and dominating, and hopefully maybe even the chance that we might see a win or two forthcoming. Until next week, for Dan Morang, I'm Dave Deckard. Thank you so much for joining us.